This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Cisco's going to be pissed.
Hello everybody, I am Geppo and welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review show that's putting the humanities back into science fiction. I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Isix.
Hi.
And this week I literally only remembered what we were watching about 5 minutes ago because this episode had so little impact that I couldn't remember anything that happened until I looked at my script just now.
Oh, but it has a creepy alien in it.
Oh, it has a creepy alien. It has a lot of name recognition for some reason.
Well, unlike half the titles for the third season, this was a pretty short title. Very, very, very succinct.
So we watched The Tholian Web, which is one of the episodes that I'd really heard of but never seen. It's one that keeps coming up. I keep hearing the name everywhere. They mention Tholians in various places. They do stuff that is directly related to this on Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
It is very, very well known, and I figured that it was because they did something interesting in the episode, and I was wrong.
Whoops! What fools we are! Well, I will counter that there is a couple things that are maybe interesting as far as science fiction at the time that go on, but as far as our more modern view of things, yeah, it's a little...
They have a couple of slightly interesting ideas, and I'm sure the special effects were a little hard to pull off, so I'll give them that.
In fact, special effects maybe took most of the budget for this one.
Possibly.
Yeah, because what's our guest star situation like?
Oh, we have half of one.
It's Lieutenant O'Neill you're talking about, or?
No, the voice of the Tholian. Lieutenant O'Neill shows up for all of 10 seconds. So this episode, before we jump ahead, was written by Judy Burns and Chet Richards. As a team, Chet Richards, this is the only writing credit. Apparently he was just friends with Judy Burns, who, while this is her only main series Star Trek credit, did a lot of other contemporary writing of the time, including Knight Rider and Bionic Woman, and was even listed for giving script help in Wrath of Khan.
It's also involved in something called Star Trek Continued.
Yes, the fan series that I don't know, I've never seen, I only ever heard of because people from this kept showing up on it.
Yes. Yeah, I need to check that out at some point.
Yeah, I suppose I should check it out eventually. So, there's a lot of background characters, like you said. There's a Lieutenant O'Neill who I don't even remember. There's a lot of people who are background characters on the Enterprise who I think have shown up in other episodes as well, who just basically stare or randomly attack someone for about 10 seconds and then are never seen again.
Yeah, a lot of extras without any lines.
So the major guest star, who's the person that anyone would have heard of in this, is actually voicing the alien commander. Her name is Barbara Babcock, and she was on Hill Street Blues and was a recurring character in Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman.
I recognize her face, but other than the Dr. Quinn reference, yeah, I'm not familiar with her work.
And she looks familiar. She's one of those actresses you've seen around from these kind of things, and of course was in a bunch of movies with the word gun in them because it was the time.
Day of the Evil Gun. Huh. Okay then. Heaven with a gun. Well,
I feel like we're probably going to get through this one fairly quickly, and I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I guess we may as well jump in.
All right, let's roll. Maybe we can make that super interesting.
The Enterprise is in search of its sister ship, the Defiant.
The spaceship has a sister? Neat. Hey, that implies that there might be a mommy spaceship somewhere.
What's kind of interesting with this is the way that ship names work, which I always found kind of fascinating, and they have tried to maintain the kind of modern naval tradition in Star Trek, is the Enterprise is not a particularly special ship, because when you do a kind of prototype ship, you name the prototype the whatever, usually like EX or experimental. Then the class of ship is named after that original ship. So since the Enterprise in this series is a Constellation class ship, there would have been a USS Constellation EX.
Indeed.
That would have been the original. And then any other Constellation class ship is just the sister ship of the original Constellation. So the Enterprise seems to be a very bog standard ship, since every other Federation ship we have seen in this series is another Constellation class ship, except for like one medical transport that showed up.
And or like an automated ore transport or something like that, and that's barely Federation.
Which I do think is something that's interesting, and they don't really do much with, because every other series, like Next Gen, it was the experimental flagship, largest spaceship ever created by humanity. In Voyager, it was the fastest, most experimental long-range scout ship they'd ever made. In DS9, it was the, taking over this weird space station. This is the only Star Trek where they just had, this is a normal ship doing normal things.
So everything that we run into in the original series Star Trek is kind of, I guess, just being done with standard hardware. Nothing really super special about it.
Yeah, I mean, they don't do a lot with it, but it's kind of interesting to think about in the way they present stuff, especially comparing it to later series, because this is apparently what every one of these ships goes through. It's just kind of normal.
Brain parasites and Klingon energy being fights and all sorts of other randomness. That's just standard Starfleet stuff we got going on here.
Having brought that up, the area of space that the Defiant apparently was last seen in is literally falling apart at the seams.
Whoops! Who broke space-time here?
Spock has no idea why until later, when he suddenly does, but that's another point. Here they find the Defiant, which is quite green.
Yes, it's glowing, in fact.
There was some, maybe it was just an easy special effect to do, but every time something is going wrong on this show, it's green.
Yes. Well, it's a color that's natural in the world, but unnatural in outer space.
True. So the Enterprise's equipment is not working so well because space is falling apart. So they're having difficulty scanning and navigating, and they are also losing power and quite possibly drifting. Basically, the whole ship is broke.
It's like we just sort of show up here and just things stop working.
Kirk, Chekhov, McCoy, and Spock don newfangled shiny spacesuits.
They're quite swanky.
They are pretty swanky. They're a nice, weird, retro 60s sort of design. They're way better than their old ones.
Yes. Well, the old ones are more like just hazmat suits, I guess.
Yeah. They beam over to the Defiant's bridge, where they find the captain dead with another crew member's hands grasped around his neck. They leap to the conclusion that there was a mutiny, an unprecedented event in all of Starfleet history.
Now, technically, Chekhov says there's, this is unprecedented, and Spock's like, there's nothing that was recorded that says there was a mutiny. I'm the one coughing here, not Spock. So.
They find no evidence of any mutineers aboard, however. In fact, everyone aboard is dead.
Even Selby? Yes. Peterson? Captain Hollister?
They're dead, Isix. They're all dead, Isix. Chekhov and McCoy leave to explore the ship, finding more crew members who seem to have died fighting with each other. Chekhov gets a bit dizzy and seems to not be doing well, while McCoy finds a sort of fuzzy, transparent-looking man that his hand passes through. Wait
a moment, is this guy a hologram?
Or a ghost.
Oh, a ghost.
Or a ghost hologram.
Spooky ghosts?
But he's dead, so he's like a dead ghost. He also finds the same thing is happening to a desk in one of the rooms and reports that the ship itself is dissolving.
Wait, the whole ship's now a spooky ghost?
Yes, ghost ship. It's a whole new term for the ghost ship. But back on the Enterprise, the transporters are on the fritz.
Of course, they're just suddenly starting to break down,
Scotty gets it sort of working, but they can only beam over 3 people at a time. Unfortunately, there are 4 people on the Defiant, so Kirk orders everyone else to leave while he, valiantly sacrifices himself, and this is why you don't take captains on away missions.
Yes. You're extraneous and, you're just going to get yourself killed for no reason.
After several attempts, they finally get them back on board the Enterprise, but when they try to beam aboard Kirk, it does not work, and the Defiant disappears before they can save him.
Now, I will say that throughout this episode, there is a lot of moments like this where they're sort of like being all anxious and tense, things like that. Some of them work pretty well, some of them not so much. This one was a little in the mediocre range.
One of the reasons that this episode took me about 20 minutes to write, which is about half as long as normal, is because 90% of this episode is people staring at stuff not happening.
Yep. It's like, why isn't it working? Why are we doomed? Why are we dying?
This scene took about 2 minutes for them to try to beam them over, not beam them over, try to beam them over, not beam them over, try to beam them over, not beam them over. Oh, they finally did it.
Yep.
We didn't need any of this.
Yes. So some tense moments like that is okay, and some of it can be very good. This episode kind of overdoes it.
Back on the bridge, Spock analyzes the situation and tells them that they may be able to save Kirk if they wait around for 2-ish hours.
Well, then I guess we wait around for 2-ish hours.
Scotty's not sure about the power situation, but Spock explains that they can't use any of the ship's power at all, or it could destabilize the space that they're in, and Kirk will be lost forever.
Yeah, I guess then we need to just sort of sit tight, and hopefully nothing weird happens that will screw over this entire plan we have that'll make trying to rescue him pointless.
Chekhov, at this point, echoing the entire audience, because they've literally explained nothing, is confused.
So I think in some of my notes here is, Chekhov starts bitching about this regional space.
So Spock explains that our universe runs alongside many other parallel universes, and that sometimes those spaces intersect. This is happening here.
So wait, this is like a hyperspace gateway?
I mean, they've already been to, by my count, at least 2, possibly 3 parallel universes.
Indeed.
So this is something they know.
Chekhov, don't you remember like 3 months ago?
So, the Defiant and Kirk got dragged into another universe, but since Kirk was being transported at the time, he might be okay. Then they just need to wait for the ship to emerge again.
So we're just going to say he might not be dead. That's a good bit of logic there, Spock. Okay.
Chekhov does not like this explanation, jumps up, smacks Spock around, and also anyone else that gets too close until they finally manage to knock him out.
Chekhov, what are you doing?
He was so full of rage. Same as everyone on the other ship. Oh my god.
What? Also, he's just been kind of a jerk recently. Like, remember the last episode?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has been.
Chekhov, maybe we should, if we ever have like an animated spin-off, maybe we should leave you behind.
McCoy goes to figure out what in the world is going on, and as another ship approaches, they identify themselves as a representative of the Tholian Assembly and claim that the Enterprise is in their space.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We haven't ever run into you guys before, so could you tell us where the space is good, where the space is bad, and I don't know, help us do this thing here?
Spock explains that they are engaged in rescue operations, and if they wait around for about 2 hours, they'll see the ship that they're going to save, and then they can all be on their way. The Tholians agree, but are like, if you're lying, we're going to shoot you.
So they have 1 hour and 53 minutes to figure this stuff out.
McCoy spends his time trying to cure the crew madness, and is attacked by his assistant, but Nurse Chapel saves him with a tranquilizer.
It's kind of crazy that there's just all these tranquilizers just sort of floating about that anyone with basic medical knowledge can just sort of knock people out and it's no biggie.
I mean, it seems like a particularly good idea given the number of times it's saved someone.
But I don't know, I don't think I'd want to be on a ship where people can just knock each other out like that constantly.
Back on the bridge, it's been about 2 hours, and Spock readies everyone to save Kirk, but nothing happens.
Oh no, wait a moment. What about all that stuff about, manipulating the local space-time with our engines and things like that? These Tholians, maybe they've plot inconvenienced us.
Yes, the Tholians showing up has thrown off his calculations, which is bad because McCoy tells him that this madness stuff is not actually anything that's being transmitted from person to person. It's simply a byproduct of being in this unstable region of space.
So having space-time kind of warped in a weird way is just sort of rewiring our brains?
It's bad for you, one would assume. The longer they stay here, the worse it's going to get.
So basically we're suffering from plot radiation poisoning.
Yep. Plot radiation. It's the opposite of plot armor, I guess.
Yes. Things are just bad, and it'll just keep getting worse until we solve problem.
Then the Tholians attack. Spock tries to talk them out of it, but has to fire back and disable the ship. But now the power that they used is fused, and they can't do anything because the ship's broken.
Well, that sucks. I guess we're going to all be driven mad, and our ship's going to get pulled into another dimension then.
McCoy gets really angry that Spock did something.
Would you want him to do, Spock? McCoy, nothing?
I mean, he's probably angry because of the space madness, and they do say it later, but this entire episode is like, why did you do that? We were being attacked.
Yes.
First I was trying to save Kirk, then we were being attacked. The situation kind of evolved naturally.
Yeah. Oh, McCoy, just chill out, man.
Basically, McCoy just questions every command decision that Spock makes for no reason. Just then, 2 more Tholian ships arrive, this time staying outside of weapons range because they, I guess, are no match for the Enterprise because the other one got blown out of space pretty easily.
Now, I would like to point out that the something kind of amusing about the effects of the when the Enterprise knocked the other one away. It was like zap, zap, zap at the shields, and it's holding steady, and suddenly its shields fails, and it suddenly goes flying like someone flicked it away. It was just kind of amusing. But anyway,
I guess it shows you how shields work.
Yes.
The Tholian ships begin dragging a glowing line around, creating a lattice work around the Enterprise. Spock doesn't know what it is, but it cannot be good.
I don't know. I have a bad feeling that ships named Enterprise will be gotten behind weird barriers that have very similar patterns multiple times in the future.
Spock holds a memorial ceremony for Kirk, which McCoy is angry about. One of the crewmen goes crazy during the memorial. Spock tries to get back to work, but McCoy insists that they need to go to Kirk's quarters to look at his last orders they're supposed to view in event of his death.
Okay, kind of in the middle of something, but I guess we can go do this.
Spock finally relents, but once they get to Kirk's quarters, McCoy goes he doesn't care about the orders. He just wanted to see what Spock would do because I don't know why manufactured discord, apparently. At this point, I'm just like, all right, Spock, I think you're well within your rights to just start ignoring McCoy. Spock turns on the last orders anyway, and Kirk basically tells them to get along, stupid.
Spock should have said, it's like, well, that was an obvious order to give us as his last order, so let's actually follow it, shall we?
Yeah, he gives kind of a speech thing about how Spock's a good commander, but he needs to lean on McCoy because McCoy's instincts are good, and McCoy needs to trust Spock to be a good commander and support him as captain even when he thinks he's making weird decisions.
Get along, you two.
This embarrasses them both into awkwardly apologizing and going off to save the ship.
All right, now that we've gotten over our weird interpersonal drama, let's go save the day.
Uhura's getting ready for bed in her room when suddenly she sees Kirk floating in her mirror.
He does occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. She runs out to tell Spock, but McCoy finds her first and thinks it's just part of the space madness and takes her into sickbay.
Well, at least she hasn't tried to, punch you in the face, McCoy. Though you kind of deserve it right now.
More crew go crazy and attack each other. Scotty keeps repairing things. McCoy's trying to find a cure, and he's getting sort of closer, but not really. That's about it.
Yep, we're teching the problem here. That's about it.
Eventually, Scotty also sees Kirk floating around the engine room. He reports this to the bridge, and Spock thinks that everyone's just hallucinating because they want to see Kirk back. Then they all see Kirk floating around the bridge.
Well, I guess we're all hallucinating now. Maybe we should all be confined to quarters.
McCoy does go back to Uhura and let her out of sickbay, telling her that she wasn't crazy after all, so that was nice.
She's not going to just be tied up for no reason now.
Spock calculates that their phaser blast literally cut a hole in space, and now Kirk is sort of free-floating around because he got separated from the Defiant, and he's also running out of air, because all he had was a spacesuit.
Didn't they say that Kirk had 3 hours of air left, and then, he ran out of air an hour ago?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So I guess this Kirk has been thrown forward in time an hour or two? Maybe?
Maybe. Scotty thinks that they can get their transporters working again by the next time he appears, but it'll be cutting it really close. They also won't have full power. McCoy shows up with a bottle of something, It's apparently nerve gas that the Klingons use, but if you mix it with alcohol, it cures madness instead of killing you.
It only kills your brain a little bit.
Scotty immediately drinks it and takes the entire bottle off to his quarters. Spock is very suspicious that McCoy is trying to poison them all until McCoy drinks some. And I would have been as well because he's acting weird.
Yes.
They head back to the bridge where Chekhov is back and all cured up. Kirk appears on the view screen. Spock orders Scotty to punch it, and they are suddenly elsewhere.
Yep.
Apparently, space was so unstable that when they turned the ship on, it sent them several parsecs away and free of the Tholian trap, never to be mentioned again.
Things just sort of happen at this point.
They also somehow dragged Kirk along, so they now can transport him aboard.
So all of this, it seems just incredibly lucky?
Convenient.
Convenient. Contrived, there's the word.
Later on, everything's back to normal, and Kirk asks about how much Spock and McCoy fought when they thought he was dead. They're like, us? No, nothing at all. And he goes, oh, okay, well, I guess my last orders were useful to you. And they go, oh, we didn't have time to look at that. Haha, yeah. It's hilariously joke ending, I guess.
Hooray, ha, 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 ha.
The end.
The end.
This was so... I don't know, this whole thing was very nonsensical, and I don't know what to make of it.
Well, I will say that they were trying to have an episode that was very much exploring the interactions of McCoy and Spock, but they don't pull it off well.
Well, you can't really have an episode that is hung on the interactions of two characters when you have explicitly stated that one or both of them is being mentally affected by the environment.
Indeed. This is a moment to maybe better explore the internal workings of the characters as opposed to their interactions, because their interactions are going to be slanted by this weird space effect. But the internal stuff, you can, it's like, okay, it's like, I know this is coming over me. How do I sort of fight that? We've already had stuff similar to that before. I think all the way back in the Naked Time, where suddenly it's like, oh, Spock's having this sort of, I need to like remaster myself because I've been being influenced by this disease stuff here. But we don't really get much of that here.
Yeah, and Spock is apparently immune.
Maybe.
Possibly. They don't really specify.
Yeah, he does seem a little, I guess, more put off than usual, but that might also just be because McCoy's bugging him so much.
I'm also really curious what the people who wrote Star Trek, and this is just communal, because it's happened in several different episodes written by different people in different seasons. What did people think, or what did the show Bible say proper command decisions were? Because every time they put Spock in command, he makes very normal, correct decisions about what to do given extreme situations that usually save everyone. Yep. Yet he is constantly criticized for making improper command decisions.
I think some of that, especially McCoy's case, is more he's just kind of a bigot. And so he's going to give Spock a hard time where he wouldn't give Kirk the same hard time for the same decisions.
Yeah, which is not like... They're not being very clear on whether we're supposed to think he's making bad decisions. In this episode, probably not, but in previous episodes, we're obviously supposed to be siding against him.
Yeah.
And I suppose it is something about like just trusting someone other than the captain, but that would only make a sense if you like did an episode like they did in Next Gen, the disaster episode, where someone who doesn't have any command experience is suddenly the highest ranking officer, and you have to figure out how to trust them in command. This is someone with a ton of command experience who is the second officer on the ship.
And so they have already had the training, the experience, basically everything they need for this to work out.
Yeah, like taking over when the captain is incapacitated is literally their job.
Yes. But just no one likes it, I guess. Yeah, this is such a confusing decision. It just keeps coming back, and it's just unsettling, I guess.
I think it shows this interesting dynamic that I would definitely need to do a bit more research on to be able to comment on more fully, but it always strikes me that they have like legitimately praiseworthy representations of race, especially given the 60s, by just having a diverse crew that no one comments on. And I saw someone mention that in a later episode, they have like a character from history pop up, and they make what they think is a racially insensitive comment, and everyone's confused because racial insensitivity just doesn't exist anymore, which is an interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
But then they keep showing racism against Spock and other non-humans, but unexamined racism. It's just there, and no one seems to care, and it's normal and expected.
I guess the trope is often referred to as fantastic racism, that because these are not humans hating on other humans, that it's okay for some reason.
Yeah, but you're supposed to use it to show how stupid racism is.
Indeed. You're
not supposed to just be like, well, it's fine now.
This is a great opportunity to sort of explore, our own biases, that they do evolve over time. There are things that people get, don't like each other now that no one would have thought of think about, a few centuries back, and things from back then that, are much less cool about hating on people about. And people's sort of perceptions of each other evolve, and even if inside the human race we've managed to solve all our internal bigotries amongst each other, the fact that they still have this bigotry to outsiders, beyond the species, is quite telling. It suggests that the human race in Star Trek is not as highly evolved as they like to pretend they are.
Well, what you kind of get to inevitably, if you say that you've changed the society but many of the problems still exist, is that the problems are just innate instead of societal.
Yeah.
Now, I feel like we'd be kind of remiss, even though we've talked about it a couple times before, to not look at the madness as disease to be afraid of idea again. Except this one's more interesting because they're not doing it as a communicable disease in this. It's still something to be afraid of, and some weird, like, you're just going to snap and start randomly attacking people. But this one's a complete environmental cause.
A proximity. It's like a beacon of madness as opposed to something you pass on. You go there, bad stuff happens.
They at least don't fall into what you'd get in some modern tropes where you talk about why some people are affected faster than others.
I guess it was kind of an interesting choice that they had some people like sort of instantly being influenced by it, but others holding off for quite some time. But I didn't mention in the episode, but they're going about the on the Defiant. There was like one scene where they actually went into the sick bay, and there was a bunch of people who were strapped down to the beds. And then we see that very much the same thing happens on the Enterprise later. That there are sort of various stages of groups of people were kind of being affected by it, and the crew is responding in a very similar fashion between the two.
They did some good foreshadowing earlier, and then just ignored it later. Like it was good setup. I still don't understand. I mean, I think the main criticism that I would have of the episode plotline overall is what were the Tholians doing there?
Well, I think that
they didn't serve any particular purpose.
Well, they showed up originally because they want to, like, you're in our territory, go away. But after that, they are just sort of this background threat that if they succeed in building their barrier, their web thing, that the Enterprise will just be sort of trapped there and, I guess, going slowly bad.
Yeah, but the weird thing is they keep doing this. They keep stacking clocks.
Yep.
Because you've already got that they want to save Kirk. And you could have had a ship show up. You could have had the Tholian show up, go, you're in our territory. You're like, oh no, they have disrupted the thingy and now it's harder to save Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
And then they need to repair the ship, which is why they're stuck there. But they already have that if they don't repair the ship, they're going to all go mad and die and possibly dissolve like the other ship did.
Be sucked into a whole other universe or something like that.
Yeah, and since repairing the ship is the thing that also gets them out of the web, it doesn't really affect anything.
Yes. It's like, well, this will solve all our problems, so let's just do that. So yeah, it is very. There's definite levels of plot redundancy here. On topic of contrivances. I will say though that the building of the web was kind of interesting, because this is like when the first times in science fiction you really see folks thinking in a very three-dimensional sort of pattern, where it's like, yeah, we're going to wrap this thing around your entire ship, not just make a circle and hope you don't go above it.
That is true.
So I'll give them props for that.
Odd, though, how long it takes them to make the thing, because this is completely ineffective against anything that's not already disabled.
I guess in some ways it is sort of like spiders cocooning up their prey.
Yeah.
The Enterprise has been disabled, and now we're just going to wrap them up, and then we'll suck out their insides later. So of course they're all going to be, I guess, have killed each other by that point, but it just makes it easier to deal with, I guess.
I will say I'm running into a weird problem with this episode, because like I said, I was going to talk about the madness is disease idea that they had, but that all they did was say, well, it's an environmental cause that's causing some weird neurological effects, which happens. We have that now, like radiation, certain kinds of toxic chemicals, things that you might work with can cause weird neurological problems. So, okay, they did that. They're not making madness into this weird thing. They're just showing it affecting different people and making it a ticking clock. So they're simultaneously like not doing anything interesting and making the episode kind of bad, but not making any major mistakes that you can talk about.
Yes.
Overall, they've made something so innocuously bland that it's very difficult to figure out what to comment on.
But the beige years later, though. But yeah, you're totally right. There is a lot they have sort of touched upon, but have just been playing it safe this entire episode, and then adding filler.
I think the particular thing that they've wanted to hang the episode on is the idea of trusting each other.
Indeed.
And I don't have a lot to comment on that, because I'm sure that there's a lot of things around trust that you could bring in. The only particular question that you have in this entire series is, why is this crew of people who work together every day and whose lives literally depend on each other so distrustful of everyone around them?
It's a good question. Maybe there's a whole bunch of other adventures where everyone's just constantly backstabbing each other for no reason.
I feel like there's just a particular thing, and I've heard some people talk about this, like just randomly, because as we record this, we're still in the beginnings of the coronavirus panic that's been happening. Mm-hmm. This is not coming out for several months, so who knows where we'll be by then. But hopefully better.
Yes, hopefully better, or alternatively, I'm going to build a spaceship.
But I heard some people talking about the pandemic movie the other day, and they were saying that there's something very nice about having a story that is about competent professionals doing their job well in stressful situations.
Indeed.
I feel like there's a few movies that do that very well, and a couple of shows, and that was basically the entire thing that got me into Star Trek originally, was watching Next Generation and having it just be a ship full of competent professionals who get along well and do extreme things.
It's sort of the, I guess, iconic interpretation of that idea, that these are people that are literally the best of the best put together to solve kind of out there problems, to overcome adversity that might not necessarily be able to be handled by most folks. And it's it's kind of cool that that even still they have troubles doing that occasionally, because some of these problems are just so out there.
Yeah, and I think there's just something to be said for that, and it's really sad given that we've gotten like in the interim after like we started moving on to other Star Trek series. We got like Apollo 13, which is a very, very good movie about people who are the best at what they do, trying to save people in a horrible situation. I would say the same thing with The Martian.
Yep.
And it's just a genre of sci-fi that we've gotten a few really good standout examples of, but for some reason they've just not gone back to it on Star Trek or even on kind of the sci-fi television level.
I wonder if that lack thereof is influenced by my own creative works. The novel I'm trying to get an agent for instance, a friend of mine has read part of it, and he's like, it is a little weird that you have a story here that seems to be full of people that are basically Sherlock Holmes levels of competent. I'm like, well, they are. You don't really just put random people into the situation, so it kind of makes sense they'd be competent.
Yeah, what is someone like McCoy even doing in space?
No one else was available?
I mean, he's kind of the embodiment of this trope. Maybe that's something to mention. We have this weird trope, especially in medicine. It's something that people advocate actively, even in the real world, not just as a TV writing thing. That it's better to have a medical professional who knows what they're doing but is a jerk.
Specific skill over bedside manner.
Which we hit a lot. We hit it with that, and we hit it a lot in something like the computer programming sort of Silicon Valley type world. I think you get a little bit of that with engineering, even though they're forced to work together a little bit more than some programmers are. So you'd get it a slightly less because you have to be at least tolerable enough to work with one other person sometimes.
Yes. Physicists have a little bit of issue with this, unpleasant jerk professors occasionally as well. And it's one of those things it works for some people, but everyone else just kind of loathes them.
Well, you have this interesting problem because in medicine especially, we have the research to prove that having a horrible bedside manner and being a generally unpleasant person has negative consequences for patient outcomes. It's just bad for people.
So my doctor is kind of an asshole, and he stresses me out. This is probably not the situation. Yes, the proper situation to be stressed out in. Uh-oh.
And you get to other things as well, and I think it's something to talk about with how weird they are on this show about collaboration and cooperation and trusting each other. Because, if you have someone who's a complete jerk, who's trying to work in any situation, they're not getting along with people, they're losing a lot of productivity, they're not working on the team, any amount of specific genius that you think you're getting from the super skilled person who's really good at their job is lost by them diminishing everyone around them's ability to do work.
Indeed. You might get a +1 from them, but you're getting a -1 for everybody else.
Yeah. So this trope is weird, and it's interesting to see how much we swung back. Because it's weird just watching this old show particularly, but any older show from this era or older shows, older movies, it is weird how inept your heroes are allowed to be.
Indeed.
And it's not like modern things where you will sometimes have an inept hero who doesn't get stuff done very well, or that's part of the joke or something. This is not only are they inept, but the world conspires around them to make their ineptitude work.
Everyone's now Mr. Bean.
And the one competent character that you get in this show, in Spock, who's not being inept and makes good decisions, is constantly called a bad person for doing so.
Because you are less fallible than the rest of us, that means you're by necessity evil or something, I guess.
Yeah, it's very weird writing.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. I mean, I suppose the 50s and 60s, you had the big, not only the large population boom from the post-war years, you also had the massive economic boom from the post-war years, but you hadn't quite gotten to somebody who's not a middle-aged white dude should be in charge yet. So you basically had to give every middle-aged white dude a good job. So you probably had a lot of inept idiots running around.
And so I guess this is maybe just sort of seen as normal. Everyone's kind of bad at their job, but nobody really notices because it's everywhere.
If you have to give every single person in this one group a job, you're going to be giving the people who aren't good at the jobs over people who would be better just because they aren't in that group.
So yeah, it's good to remember that this is well before affirmative action and things like that, where...
Yeah, I suppose it unintentionally describes the entire situation because you have, someone who's, definitely worse at being in command in charge, but anytime he's not in charge and the person who's actually good at being in command is giving orders, everyone hates him.
Yeah. Unintentional social commentary of the time.
I mean, I think you can only get the social commentary of the time because it was written like mirroring what everyone grew up with.
Indeed. Now I'm having visions of that one episode of Futurama where Fry accidentally ends up in Los Angeles. It's like everyone's running around here shooting each other, and the you can't see it through the air. It's like, yeah, that's obviously what Los Angeles is like. What's up with the social commentary? This is just normal for us. Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about faster than light travel?
Sure, why not?
All right.
I mean, they do that already on this show, so.
Well, I want to, sort of, I guess, draw a little bit of a circle around their sudden teleportation at the end. They appear to have dropped out of the universe for a little bit in order to pull that off. So it's almost like they've traveled through hyperspace, man.
Well, it's either that or your good old space folding idea, because they already said that space was weird and unstable.
Indeed. So it's not exactly clear what sort of FTL method that they pull off here, but it is, I guess, kind of cool that they have more than just warp drive going on in classic Star Trek.
Yeah, well, as I understand it, I guess for people who aren't as versed on the physics stuff, you have like kind of three very basic faster than light theories that you tend to work with in most science fiction. You have the hyperspace idea, which is the first one you mentioned, which is since faster than light travel is literally impossible in our universe, you somehow move the thing that you want to move faster than light into a different universe.
Usually when it's smaller.
You can break the laws of physics in because they are different there.
You want to be careful. You don't want to end up in a universe where the fine structure constant is a whole lot different. Otherwise, you'll just fall apart.
And then you have the space folding, which is the other thing they might have done here, where through some mechanism, you fold space-time itself so that the actual physical distance you need to travel is shorter, so you never actually travel faster than light. The distance you had to travel just happened to be a lot shorter than it was originally.
This is also how wormholes effectively operate, where you are more just stretching and bending and twisting the space-time manifold in order to link up very different points in space and time.
And then you have the warp drive theory in this, which is sort of described badly in most of Star Trek, but the general idea is you are sort of creating a bubble of space-time around the ship that can, move separately to the way that the universe normally moves.
Now, in the real physics world, the nearest, I guess, sort of description of is the Albuquerque drive. I can't pronounce that name properly. There's an A and there's some C's in there. But the main drawback to getting that working in the real world is most of the theories that make it work rely on things like negative mass or strange particles. And I'm not talking like strange quarks. I mean like just really weird exotic matter sort of things. And so because we haven't really encountered any of those things in the real world, it's like these are theoretical maybe, but we have no proof they exist at this point. So kind of stuck on getting our warp bubble set up.
Yeah, I remember last year there was somebody really excited about trying to prove negative energy.
I haven't heard anything about that for a while, so...
Yeah, they didn't do it, apparently, but they were really excited. They were like, oh, we recalculated something or other, and it turns out it isn't going to take an infinite amount of power to bend space-time. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. Well, I have heard that several variations of the Albuquerque solution that definitely reduce the amount of nonsense you need to have been sort of put forward. I probably should look this up, but there's also another version where you sort of set up a special highway, I guess, of devices in a path between two star systems that would sort of generate artificially the field as you are passing through it without having to deal with negative mass. But there are some complicated engineering questions there that might not be possible still. So
generally, fast and light travel still very, 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 very theoretical.
It is one of those big Maybe, but we need to figure out a lot more stuff to be sure that if it is possible that it is, or if it's not possible to, fill in these gaps in physics and things like that.
All right, we somehow managed to get like 3 or 4 things to talk about out of this episode, so I think it's probably time to move on to the galaxy's favorite game show.
Woo! Welcome back, everybody, to the Galaxy's Favorite Game Show, where our various contestants have been racking up all sorts of points here in the various contests and the demonstrations of their skill and madness here, because this is definitely one of those episodes where there's a lot of people acting and pretending they're mad. Anyway, let's get started here. Our first, big-time prize is the Dimension Jump Award, which goes to Kirk, the Defiant, and the entire Enterprise for traveling through alternative universes because of reasons. What do they win, Gepwin?
They win the box set of Sliders. It's a very, very interesting sci-fi show we should cover at some point. But, same thing. Hoping every leap will be their leap home.
I really enjoyed Sliders. Only saw maybe the first or second season.
After that, it gets weird.
All right, I'll trust you.
It goes on way longer than it has any right to, and they try to have a larger contiguous universe, and they change the entire cast by season 5.
It's like, where are we trying to get back home to? I don't know.
Well, they get home, and then it's maybe not home, but then there's another, race of people from the world where Cro-Magnons took over, who are evil, but are, space Nazis, but they're all doing dimensional jumping stuff instead of space travel. It's very strange.
I remember some bits of that, but I definitely left it off before things got too convoluted there. Anyway, back to the awards. Our second one is the Everybody's Dead Day, which goes a prize, which goes to the Defiant, because that's kind of how everybody be on board. What does the ship win, Gepwin?
The ship wins, and I think most of Starfleet should win those AI cores that you just put standard on ships. The number of times that the entire crew dies, at the very least, you need some sort of rudimentary homing device on these things.
Something to maybe activate systems to sort of push it back home, at least a little bit. Put on a nice distress signal along the way. Our third and final one for today is the Space Boot Award, which goes to the Tholians for effectively trying to put a boot on the Enterprise once it's clear that the conventional fighting probably won't help here. What do they win, Gepwin?
The Tholians win the Space Cop Award. Fight the system. Boots are a really horrible thing that's controlling your means of getting the money that you need to get to pay the ticket to get the boot, and it's a very bad system, and we need to rewrite some of our traffic laws.
Have to agree. So fight the power and fight the Tholians and their space boot and their space cop ways. That's all I got, Gepwin. Want to take us away?
Yes, thank you all for joining us. This show that's, I don't know, it's so bland we didn't even have good awards, I think.
This thing that happened. Oh.
Yes, it's definitely a thing that happened. On the Galaxy's Favorite Game Show!
Woo, yay!
All right, so people who are paying attention will see that this was Watchers of Tomorrow episode 69.
69?
Nice. It's obligatory.
What does that mean, Gepwin?
That means that next week we are not continuing with Star Trek, which is going to be a weird, unpleasant, strange episode. Not great. So we get another week before we hit that weirdness. And instead, we are going to be watching a movie, because if you're new here, every 10 episodes we take a break from whatever series it is we are covering to give ourselves a little bit of a rest and watch a film. Now, the last time we did this without a guest star, it was Isaac's pick, and we covered 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Indeed.
Now, last time we had a guest star, so that interrupted our planning cycle, but you should go back and listen to that one because it was very good, where we did Cloud Atlas. Mm-hmm. That was a fun one.
With Jesse. Fantastic time.
But since this is my pick this time, I'm going to pick what is, interestingly, a movie that I only saw for the first time last year, but very, very quickly became one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time.
Oh.
And also the first animated movie that we are going to cover on this show, which is 2006's Japanese sci-fi anime psychological thriller Paprika.
This is a film that I've only seen part of, so I only know bits and pieces of it. So I'm actually
if you
looking
only
forward to
saw
this.
part of this, you must be very confused.
Yes.
This film was co-written, animated, and directed by Satoshi Kon, who did a massive amount of very, very good animated movies and a TV show. He unfortunately died in 2010 in his mid-40s, so who knows what else he would have come up with. But
Yeah, that's horrible.
yeah, it is a complete tragedy given his filmography includes some of the greatest animated movies ever put to film.
So let's check out one of those greatest movies ever put to film.
Yes, Paprika was one of his later movies. Also, I believe one of the only ones you could call science fiction. Most of his movies are kind of in the psychological genre.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, very, very good. I would highly, highly, highly recommend that people try to check this one out beforehand. One, because it is a masterpiece of filmmaking, and hearing us describe it is not going to do it any kind of justice at all.
Indeed. It's one of those films that I really should have gotten around to, watching through the entirety of myself, because when I saw it previous, it's like, wow, this is fantastic.
The animation itself is worth watching, even if you don't care about the sci-fi elements.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the film itself covers a lot of very interesting themes. If you, for some reason, can't find the film to watch, at the very least, look up the soundtrack on YouTube, because it also has some of the best music of any original soundtrack I've ever heard.
So there's a feast of enjoyment to be had.
Yes, so I'm spending a bit longer on this than I would otherwise, because I just want to very much encourage that everyone go try to find this before next week's episode. If nothing else, because it is going to be basically impossible to summarize.
Yes.
This movie deals primarily with dream logic.
Indeed.
It is a central theme, and I either have to spend 6 hours describing every part of it or skip giant swaths of what's going on.
So I think we're going to have our work put in for us for this then.
Yes, unfortunately. So I hope that you can find this before next week, and that you will enjoy us talking about Paprika next week on Watchers of Tomorrow.
I'm excited. Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, dream a little dream for me. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreaker, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.